and welcome to Kunal Kapoor ji. Thank you so much for this conversation for the Center for Embodied Knowledge.
जी
And we would like to hear about your journey from doing your PhD in industrial engineering to the farm that you work in Bhopal, if I'm correct. And what made you make this shift? And if you could talk us through about what you do now. But firstly, you were in Kashi recently, and you said that you were in a different maybe kind of exploration, or is it a same kind of exploration that made you shift from industrial engineering to what you do now?
I think it's all connected. I think my journey starts way back when I was about 23. I was taking a drop after engineering.
Could you speak up a little louder, please?
I said I was taking a break after engineering for a year. And that's when my uncle called me up one day. I was in Jharkhand that time in Bihar. I was in Jamshedpur. And my uncle called me up one day saying, "Do you want to learn Reiki?" Because I was wearing specs. And there was nothing fundamentally wrong with my eye power. It's just that something went wrong with something the doctor diagnosed.
Right.
So I was on a break. I was preparing for my GRE TOEFL. I knew I was going to go to the States the next year. But I took a break. My uncle said, "Come for 15 days." So I came for 15 days. The guy who took me under his wing and he started teaching me Reiki, I told him that I have about 2 weeks, and he said, "2 weeks mein kuch nahi hoga. You can't learn
Mhm.
nothing in 2 weeks. You stay for about 2 months, then we'll talk." So I stayed back for 2 months, and he opened up my door into India in a way which I had read about it, but I think India was inside me, and it was just one of the most fascinating things ever. I became a grandmaster, which basically means you get a degree which is known as 3A. I didn't get a degree which is 3B, where you formally start healing people. But with 3A and the kind of devotion I had, my teacher sort of initiated me into healing. I don't think it was a very wise decision, because only later I understood that people who are in brahmacharya or grihast or want to go into grihast, these pedagogies are very, very taxing. Um, Luckily, I had time then, so I had the sadhana to be able to, get done with the karma which I was picking up from people, etc. But it's not advisable. I didn't have the wisdom then.
Mhm.
And I should be studying my GRE and TOEFL exams, exam books then, and I ended up reading the Bhagavad Gita and Osho, and something was fundamentally shifting within me. I was in Madhya Pradesh, I was in Bhopal. Bhopal is culturally a very aware place. There's a lot of theater which happens over here. Theater happens for free over here. A lot of tribal festivals happen around here, and that just those 2 months in 1998, which is almost 27 years back, fundamentally shifted the course and the trajectory of my life. I'm back in Bhopal now. I've been in Bhopal for the last 10 years, but I think when I connect my dots, the journey started in Bhopal in 1998. Of course, I went back, I went to the States. The first day in the States, it was clear that there's a cultural mismatch between what I experienced in 1998 and what I'm experiencing in 1999. And that sort of did create some dejection in my mind. But I said, okay, this is a good opportunity to soak up some other world. Maybe it's going to come handy someday.
Mhm.
And I think I think the funny thing about picking up the Indic thought is you just open up the book, and if it resonates, you start applying that in your life. And I think that's what I started doing. And my advisors were going crazy because I was getting fundamentally different inputs into my research, and it didn't make sense to them, because they used to come to my research lab and they used to ask me, "Why don't you?" I was reading Discovery of India one day, and I was 4 minutes late for my research meeting. That was the first research meeting I was late for. And my advisor came in, he saw the book in my hand, said, "Why aren't you reading course material?" I said, "I get research ideas from everywhere, because you need to know what the hell you are up to, and you
Mhm.
need to be able to connect your dots." And he's the same guy who I went to after my master's program and said, "I want to get a PhD." and he said, go to Stanford, because he had his master's from Stanford. And I was trying to work on something known as symbolic systems. Symbolic systems in India, the best known symbolic system experiment here would be the way our temples are designed. It has a deeper connotation. It has a societal connotation. It's not something random which is happening over there. It's physics meets economics meets culture meets history meets art and aesthetics. And he gave me the liberty to develop my own course curriculum, because symbolic systems is either taught or was either taught at Stanford at that point in time, or Oxford, I think. Those are the two places which were recognized for that. But I had that Indic DNA within me. So, I started dabbling with a whole bunch of things. I went to the Department of Forestry. I went to their research lab, saw what they were doing, and I remembered where I grew up as a kid in Jharkhand, which was, absolute tribal hinterland. It made sense to me. My advisor asked me to pick up statistics, because a lot of people don't understand that it's most of the social scientists who actually created statistics as a tool to figure out what the hell is going on, because large scale um, complex data sets have to be sieved through. So one of my co-advisors was a guy who had a background in sociology but was teaching in the department of psychology, and he was helping me figure out how to create meaning out of the data sets which I was gathering. And my research was interesting. My research was trying to make sense out of oral data sets which were doing the rounds with the mechanics who were taking care of aviation maintenance. I was working with Federal Express, and in a moment of epiphany, I realized that you need digital, you need internet, you need a lot of local language, you need to preserve a lot of local language, you need to percolate it into India. I didn't know when that's going to happen, but my dots started connecting. That technology is not all bad. You just need to know how the hell to leverage technology. So that was my first moment of epiphany, when I realized that, all right, Indic thought includes a lot of things. It includes technology, relevant technology at the right pace, at the right time. And funny things started happening. A lot of faculty members started coming into my life who made it clear that I had to go back, which was very rare, because Americans telling me that I needed to go back was very rare. And obviously, they were much more experienced. They knew where the world is headed. They knew where the markets are headed. They knew that the pivot would come from India because of the sheer scale of number of people we have here. You can call them consumers, you can call them coders, you can call them employees, doesn't matter. But the money had to come here. We had to have our chance with destiny. And I still remember my defense was in the December of 2006, and I was asked to invite a faculty member who wasn't on my committee, and he asked me, what do you intend to do after your defense? I said, I have a job in Pondicherry, and I have a job in New York. He said, there's no rocket science, you need to go to Pondicherry. I'm like, damn, even this guy is asking me to go to Pondicherry. So I took up the job in New York, but in 3 months I knew my cousin was working in New Jersey. Sorry, he was working in New Jersey. He was working in Princeton. He was living in upstate New York. We used to meet every weekend, and both of us used to wonder, when the hell are we gonna go back? So he came back. He became a faculty at IIM Ahmedabad, and I wanted to take a more rigorous route, because I had two or three hypotheses which were of concern to me. And I think after 3 months in New York, I knew I had to go back. And incidentally, some of the things which I'm working on right now, the second moment of epiphany was when I ended up in Pondicherry. I was staying in Pondicherry. I was working in Auroville, and that's when I started figuring out some of the other things which were making sense to me, in terms of the kind of skill sets you required, the kind of people you required, the kind of learning crucibles you required, the kind of interactions you required, the kind of collaborations you required. But in my mind, um, Auroville had played its role out. and you needed at least 1,000 different Orwells, if I might say so. Um, and again, I stayed there, and it became very evident that I had to start working with farmers. I had to start working with rural kids because they have a DNA which is very unlike to the urban kids. Urban kids are smart, but they are analytically smart, and you require that skill set. But the sheer cognitive, um, the cognitive vision of the people in the rural parts of India, you needed that. And obviously, I wanted to dabble with policy. My cousin had already dabbled with policy, so I knew what it was all about. And I didn't want it to be a very theoretical pursuit for me because I have an engineering background and I like to be a part of building things. So I left Auroville. I went to Bangalore, and then it's almost like destiny started connecting my dots. I was just trying to take the hard road, but that hard road was the dots which, when I look back, were the dots I had to pick. So I started working on a project with some colleagues of mine, not directly, but brainstorming on something known as one laptop per child, which was trying to figure out if you gave access to information to rural kids, what could happen. I started working on a project with Idea Cellular on their rebranding strategy to figure out if rural penetration of internet happened in the right way, what could happen. And some of the things which the housewives told me way back in 2007 and 8 still resonates with me. And I'm seeing it come true now, because if you look at some of the vernacular speaking kids who are making all these YouTube channels and Instagram channels and projecting their culture onto the map of the globe, if you will. um, those insights started coming to me in 2007. You can't do everything, but I think the great thing was that the moms in the hinterland knew how to get out of poverty, and that was very heartening. And then I went to Hyderabad to do a job, and there I think my reporting manager asked me to go and figure out what rural India needs in terms of software and hardware and blah and blah and blah and blah. So I did like a 15-20 day rural immersion. I went to Adilabad, I went to Hyderabad, I went to Wardha, I went to Amarkantak, and I started seeing India, and that just like blew me. I was like, staying indoors in air-conditioned rooms is one thing, but once you hit the road, India is a complete different ball game.
Mm.
And that gave me courage to go work for a startup in North India, because North India is very business oriented. They mean numbers. And I found Bangalore and Hyderabad a little slow then, because Delhi survival is at stake on a regular basis, because that transaction is very different to the free money which flows in Bangalore. So I went work for a startup in Gurgaon, and I actually got a whiff of what it is to build a startup, because I wanted to build my own thing.
Mm.
And there I sort of understood just the immense um, raw power the talent in India has. But I also realized that most are not going to be risk takers because we don't have free flow of cash. And I realized that I'll have to sort of be the guy who sort of goes and does his experiments and see where it takes me. Most people didn't have the bandwidth, and for all the right reasons. I was almost on the way out from my corporate job in about 2012, and I think my family said work for a couple of more years, because I was working for smaller outfits. Cash was going to be a problem because I wanted to do my own thing. And then I started working at Accenture in Bangalore for about 2.5 years. That's where I met a lot of very interesting people. I met the guys who were trying to dabble with education, people who were trying to dabble with culture, people who were trying to dabble with media. Bangalore had just started expanding in terms of its horizons there. A lot of cool people trying to do a lot of cool things had just started happening over there almost 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 years back. And I realized that while that was a very corporate way to solve problems for India, I thought something was missing. And I was almost scared to admit that something was missing, because I knew if something was missing, then I had to fill those dots, which meant I had to leave and take a punt. I was getting used to a paycheck, and that was a little scary. So I was
Mhm.
sitting in Riyadh working for a client one afternoon, and I realized that I'm almost 39. It's now or never. And
Mhm.
I resigned. I applied to 21 places for an internship because I had to start my life from scratch. Most of the people rejected me. Out of 21, I think 18 people rejected me. Sonam Wangchuk gave me an opportunity to come and work with him in Ladakh with his school, the famous Three Idiot School. There was a guy known as Raju Titus who worked with Fukuoka years back, or rather was friends with Fukuoka. He was on his way out. So he said, "You can come and intern with me for a week." But I said, a week won't be enough. And then there is a guy who gave Nasik its grape revolution, Professor Dabulkar. His student, Deepak Sachdev, he's in Madhya Pradesh. My dad had just gone through a open heart surgery a year back, so I knew I had to be close to him. So I think my journey started in 2015, almost 150 kilometers away from Bhopal, where I started working as a apprentice. You can call it a daily wage laborer or whatever the hell you want to call it. And I started picking up the ropes. It was a very interesting village. Narmada flowed right behind us. And on this side, you had people who were dabbling with agriculture. And on the other side, you had a fishing community who was blowing up dynamites at 4:30 in the morning to catch fish.
Mhm.
And that, again, that was another uh, super moment in my life. That's the real thing. This is what happens in India, and how are you gonna
Mhm.
work for her? And then, strangely, in 3 months' time, the guy I was working with, my teacher, Deepak Sachdev, um, he thought I'm one of those urban guys who's just, come onto the fields and he's gonna do a couple of things and then he's gonna run away and gonna go do his corporate job.
Mhm.
That's what most people do. But I kept pushing, I kept pushing, I kept pushing, I kept losing weight, I kept getting scars, I kept getting, scars on my hands. And then he called up a friend of his that there's this kid who's here and I think he means business. Do you want to come take a look at him? And then the guy I've been working with for 10 years, the guy who's the founder of Sumiran, 10 years back in, I think, March last week of 2015, he came to where I was working with Deepak Susde, and he asked me, "What the hell are you up to?" And I told him some fancy answers, and he started
Mhm.
laughing because he realized I meant well, but he also realized it's a very difficult journey, and I was being very idealistic. Um, and later on, I realized that this guy had given India its first organic district across about 1 lakh acres, had made the entire district drought resistant, had done water harvesting like how. APJ had come to see his work. He had become a legend, but obviously in stealth mode. He was also an officer on special duty from the Ministry of Cultural Affairs, and he was his second portfolio was he was handling Sanchi University of Buddhic and Indic Studies. He was the founding CEO of that particular university, or he was the founding registrar of that particular university. And with him, I started looking at knowledge preservation and knowledge creation from scratch. So I was doing two things with him. I was looking at Indic systems, but on a 300 acre of arid piece of land which him and his friends had bought over several years back. We were also trying to figure out what would it take to actually have a functional panchayat. What would it be like to have rural livelihoods? What would be it like to have a proper GDP at the bottom? What would be it like to have business models and several revenue streams? And that's how you know, my journey then started with him in about 2015, and it continues. I think I've just scratched the surface in the last decade because it's been getting all your hypotheses tested. Most of it goes wrong because you come from a place of theory and hope. I think hope is important, but I think what I've realized is it's a very, 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 very long journey. Um, um, I used to say that it's a 30-year game. My mentor right now, he says that he laughs. And Sunny tells me you have to think in terms of 1,000 years. I'm like, I don't even know what it means. I don't even know what 1,000 years mean. Um, but yes, I think I finally started seeing about, I would say about 100, 150 years down the line. There are days when it's hard because you're worried about monetization, you're worried about mentoring, you're worried about business not going around, you're worried about things like COVID not happening again because we work on very thin margins. Uh, but I think, yeah, everything connects. So, for example, there is a team I know who's working with tribals in the Itarsi and Hoshangabad area, and they're dealing with some real world problems because those guys are not used to growing a lot of vegetables we guys take for granted right now because it's not meant for those areas. And there were some diseases which those vegetables were suffering from, and we were at that location. I knew what it was because I had dealt with it while I was building my startup. So I told one of the farmers, and I instantly remembered the project I did with Federal Express years back, which is like, taking nothing and trying to figure out how to preserve oral traditions and oral. I mean, that was a different context. It was the maintenance engineers, but the context might be different here, but the use case is the same. It's the farmers who don't know stuff. There are some farmers somewhere else who know stuff. So, how do you make them communicate? So, I think now when I look at this journey, it looks very glamorous and it looks very sorted. I have a lot of hard days even now. But I think what I've realized is India is a weird place, a lot of variables, no cookie cut solutions. You just start and then see what happens. And luckily for me, I've met people like Hari and Sunny and Nakku. They've taken me under their wing. They've actually given me a straw when I was almost gone. And that's kept me afloat. So that's where I am right now.
Wonderful, Kunal. This is such an amazing story.
Hmm.
Now, if we have to, build some theories around your experience, so
Hmm.
that people have takeaways from which to learn from your journey. So, if I could just go through a few questions, and
Yeah, yeah,
some of
sure.
these, struck me not when I was reading about environment or land or anything, but from a few tantra related talks. Where they talk about relationships and the relationship between human beings and animals and trees. So if I could just throw some questions at you so
Sure.
that we can, know your thoughts about these theories. Yeah. So when you explore ecology and human relations, one prominent theory of coexistence that can be inferred and developed is the idea of symbiotic coexistence through integrated human nature systems, which you're doing. And one of the core tenets of this is that humans are not separate from nature. And this rejects the anthropocentric view of human dominance over nature or the idea of nature as merely a resource to the health and functioning of natural systems. So, in your theory, when you have moved from an industrial kind of education and experience to something that is nature bound, where you're not looking at land and nature as resource, what is the transition that one has to make in mindset, and do you think it's possible in an India of today?
Wow.
Mhm.
So let me break it down to what I understand. You're asking whether is the relationship different? Can it exist and can it exist in the India today? Right?
Where we're not looking at nature or land as a resource,
Hmm.
but as an equal and symbiotic relationship.
It is possible. It is possible. We are doing that because the guy who's my teacher right now, is a guy, like there are times we are taking a walk in the village and he just meanders somewhere. And I'm like, now I understand what he's up to. But initially I was like, what the hell is he up to? And the kind of relationship he has with plants, it's almost like he knows where he's supposed to be because something has gone wrong. So I've seen it happen. So the answer to your question is, can it happen? Yes, it can happen. Does everybody have sensitivity for that? I doubt it. Um, can it happen in modern India? Yes, it can. But if you're expecting everybody to make a livelihood out of that, possibly not. So when I say you need about 1,000 or 10,000 Aurobills, um, you have a guy where I'm working right now who has that sensitivity. He's teaching me that my next internship, which starts probably sometime middle of next month, is a 3-year internship where I'm going to get closer to plants. I'm going to get closer to nature. I'm going to understand that on first principles basis. Right now, it's more like a you produce something, you sell something, but that is required for people to make livelihood. But now he expects me to take a step back and appreciate what it is to just grow a plant, for example. And that's a harder thing to do. Um, so the answer is yes, it's possible in modern context of India. Yes, it is possible. Very few people can do it. And one of my jobs in the coming maybe next decade is to figure out how to integrate those people and actually create a cluster of at least 10, 15, 20, 30 such centers where at least it's happening in those centers. Whether we can extrapolate that into the Indian context, very difficult. Without capital support, very difficult. Very difficult.
Um, Then you have integrated planning and design. Nowadays, we have a fragmented approach where economic development is pursued without ecological consideration. Bangalore is a prime example, or where conservation is seen as separate from human needs. How can we advocate for the integration of human infrastructure, economy, and social structures with natural processes? This means ecological design, designing cities, agriculture, and industries to mimic natural systems. So, do we have an understanding of the natural system enough to be able to mimic it?
Yes, we have enough understanding. We have enough understanding to engineer and mimic it. It has happened in, if you somehow, there's not enough about it, but if you pick up the Khandwa case study from 2000 to 2003, it has happened across 11,000 villages. So it has happened. It has happened to the extent that there was so much cash flow that the self-help groups were actually loaning money to the banks. So even
Mhm.
that has happened. Um, but again, can you extrapolate that to other places in India? Of course you can, but you can't do it with private money. You need like partnerships and collaborations, which hasn't been imagined in India yet. You need public, private, philanthropy, whatever you can imagine. You need like a mixed bag. Yes, it can happen. I've spoken to guys where it happened in 2000 and 2003. Some of them are mentoring me on various aspects of water harvesting, etc., etc., etc. So they were there when it was happening. So of course, it can happen. It should happen. It depends how badly we want to make it happen.
Does this have anything to do with your PhD research?
I think the only thing you learn during your PhD program is how to live with uncertainty. That's all you learn. I wasn't the brightest in my class during my bachelor's and master's, but I was more curious than the other person. Because in a bachelor's and master's, it's pretty straightforward. You go from X, Y, and Z and you get there really fast. In PhD, you have to keep dabbling with a lot of uncertainties. I've seen a lot of German kids who finish their PhDs in about a year, year and a half. But then those are the guys who will go and get onto the manufacturing belt and manufacture things with a lot of efficiency. If you're trying to manufacture something or build something for something as complex as India, you have to deal with uncertainty. Either you are as gift as Sunny Nara, or you have to be
Mhm.
able to withstand the pressure of uncertainty. So I think my PhD training came in handy.
Right. Another theoretical question is, regarding context-specific solutions, especially in India, which is so vast. Recognizing that nature, for one, is not homogeneous, unlike in other smaller countries, and solutions have to be tailored to specific bioregions and their unique ecological and human communities. How can we manage water, land, forests, and other resources not just for human consumption but for ecosystem health, given this diversity? Have you, seen anyone who's been working in multiple regions and who can like Himakiran in doing work in Tiruvannamalai? Can his model be taken to North India, for instance? Sunny Bhai says, it's not possible because our culture, our history, our land patterns, everything is so different.
I
What are
don't
your
think it's
thoughts?
possible, and I don't think you should even attempt it. But I think what is required is what people like you and Hari and Sunny are trying to do. Just make people like Hema and others meet, because even if you get that done. So, for example, there is a guy known as Balu in Chennai who has about 12 or 14 or 15 different kinds of rice. Some is for postnatal care, some is for prenatal care. Now, my point is, yes, that rice can't be grown here, but it has the mineral base which is required for women after pregnancy, before pregnancy. If you can create good markets and give cheap access to that kind of nutritious food to people in central India, of course, I'm going to go and take it. So it is less about replicating a particular model in Chennai and taking that same model in Bhopal. It will not work out. More importantly, if you can actually just create a network of these kinds of people, that itself will, open the floodgates for a lot of things. What I've realized is Indians don't understand India and then love to reinvent the wheel. So I think more time is wasted on doing things which really don't matter in this country, according to me. So yeah, I don't think we should replicate. Every 50 kilometers, the topography is different, the mindset is different, the cuisine is different, everything is different. Having said that, if you go from here to Hoshangabad, it's like a 130-kilometer drive. It's almost like a rice belt. And my point is, there's water depletion happening over there. There are other crops which need to be done. But then, how does the government give you the right price? How do you create markets? How do you sort of, help the farmers? Very complex issues. Replicating something which is happening in X to Y is not the answer. Mute. Mute, mute.
Another issue is about ethical responsibility and stewardship. And underlying this symbiotic coexistence is a strong ethical framework of stewardship. This is not about control, as your website says, but about careful and responsible management of resources and ecosystems. It implies a moral obligation to protect diversity, maintain ecological integrity. How is this ethical responsibility and stewardship? How do we, discover it once in ourselves for one? And you say that you are not imposing anything on others, and it has to come from within, in them. So how is that possible, even possible, in today's society where everyone is like, how much do we grab for ourselves?
I think something which I've learned really well with Rajesh, who's my mentor now, and Sunny, is that if you start designing systems for India uh, and think that it's going to see any fruit in the next 30, 50, 70 years, I think you're dreaming. It's not going to happen. So I think the problem is when we design for the future of India, we're trying to see end goals and end results. I think people are not working on first principles. So if you work on first principles, you will make only this much progress when everybody else is making this much progress. But if you're convinced with what you're doing and you make only this much progress, then you're going to lay the pizza base foundation for others to come and build on top of it. That is what Sanatan Relay is all about.
Yeah.
Yeah. S- And these are
Uh,
very hard choices. I don't recommend it for all. because you're right, people want to grab, and the people who want to grab should be allowed to grab.
Yeah, I mean, you really cannot change or influence anybody. So, coming from the from a very Indic background and from the Indic space, a lot of the values that were put up in Sumiran are echoed, in Indic space, especially from our Vedic heritage. The Rita or the cosmic order was the highest principle, and the Vedas emphasize Ritam cha Satyam cha, truth and order of nature as the guiding law. Agriculture, rituals, medicine, music, architecture, vastu all flowed from aligning with nature. But your website says that it's not based on principles aligned with any religion or with any scripture. So, this is something that's happening a lot in India, Kunal. Like, whether it's yoga or Ayurveda, we say it's not Hindu. So, would you be able to comment on that?
I can. It's a little controversial because I think the point we were trying to make, or at least that's what we've realized, that there is a fundamental difference between the religion Hinduism, and Sanatan. Um, and I think what we are trying to say or what we are trying to follow, and it is a very hard pill for me to swallow also at times because Sunny and Rajesh, who's my mentor over here, and Sunny is Sunny, it's almost every week they hammer it into my skull that get away from religion, get away from scriptures, because they remind me something which is very fundamental. They say that there comes a time where yantra, tantra, and mantra, all three have to be abandoned, and then the void which you stare into, that is Sanatan. And you're talking about, can we build for modern India? And I'm saying that these guys are making me think in terms of Sanatan and build in India. That itself is very tough. So imagine the intricacies of the business models. Imagine the intricacies of the long-term play which we are trying to do. So yes, I mean, religion is a good start. Hinduism is a good start, but only when you transcend that do you get into the void which actually matters. Because if you go into a lot of these tribal lands where we work, they don't understand scriptures, but they are the barefoot engineers who are trying to figure out solutions for climate change, right? So I think that is the reality which we stare at on a daily basis, and it keeps reminding us, or rather, we keep reminding ourselves that Sanatan, it's Sanatan, it's Sanatan, it's Sanatan. It's lesser of Hinduism or Judaism or Christianity or Islam or things like that.
Yeah. Because, Sanatana Dharma has, there is, I think, no issue that has not been addressed by
Yes.
us.
Yeah.
For instance, you talk about federations and loose collectives. In the Vedic civilization, you had the Janapadas and the Ganas, which were federated communities. So you have multiple deities, darshanas, and within a structure, it still allows you. They were so convinced of their what system they had that you were free to do whatever you want. You
True.
were not rule bound. So, when you talk about federations and communities, should we as eco people talk about things as if we are creating something new, creating new models and new systems, or is it something that is inherent to this land?
No, it's both. We are connecting, we are trying to create something which is inherent to the land, almost forgotten. So we're just trying to get it back. So it's extremely hard, but we are convinced it needs to be done.
Yeah,
Because even if 1,000 kids see it, if two remember by the time we are gone, our ROI is done.
yeah. So we'll put theory away for now. So could you describe a typical day in your life at your place, and what is it that you actually do, and what
So
motivates you to get up from bed and day after day and go on?
what motivates me is how a guy who's about 11, 12 years older than I am, which is Rajesh, who's my mentor now, how he works more than I do. And Sunny, who at 4:30 in the morning has deep insights over email, which when I have a hard day and I'm about to become a lost warrior, it's just uncanny how Sunny just knows what's going wrong with my head and his email trail addresses me. I don't know whether it addresses to other people on that group, it addresses to me. um, so that's what keeps me going. The other thing which keeps me going is, we've been through whatever we've been through. I had a silver spoon. My parents were well to do, so I could survive. I wasn't very greedy, not too desirous. But then when I go and start working in the incubator where we are building a 300-acre campus, I look at the other kids, I look at what I take for granted, and I'm like, yeah, they deserve a better tomorrow. So that's the other thing which keeps me going. But I think more importantly, we just spoke about Sanatan. You either get Sanatan or you don't. Nobody can teach you that. It just comes to you. It may go, but if you have the, जैसे हिंदी में भी से पात्रता, so अगर पात्रता है तो it comes back to you. So I've lost it 100 times, I've gained it 101 times, and I think that is what is important. And more importantly, I don't think I do anything which is rocket science. I conserve water. I work on biodiversity. So the forest ecosystem is up and running. So अगर उसमें पौधा लगाना है, I will put the पौधा. If I have to make manure, we'll make manure. If we have to fill in the diesel in the tractor and go, work the land, we'll do that. There's a dairy unit, which now there are a couple of really nice guys who are handling it. But in terms of troubleshooting, trying to figure out where the funds are going to come from, where the next good breed of cows are going to come from, that's something which I take care of. We built a business arm which actually supplies perishables and non-perishables weekly to NCR as well as Bhopal. So that's a part of the business I take care of. I used to be hands-on earlier. I'm not now, but I think I'm going to become hands-on again in a couple of weeks' time, because now I'm going to get deeper into ecology and nature, because I have to keep the vibrancy of the 300 acres of campus which we've created. We have to create something which, ensures that it keeps going, because nature is strong. The moment you forget the first principles, everything else will take over. And the Garden of Eden, which we are trying to create to let people remember this is what India is all about, that's gonna die. Then I used to be involved with tourism. I am trying to figure out a couple of flavors of tourism which I want to be associated with, because it takes a lot of bandwidth. You got to ensure that the operations are happening and people are being picked up, people are being received, people are being entertained. I don't have so much bandwidth. And I think one project which we are trying to do is, now we are trying to increase the amount of water we conserve, because we are anticipating that the monsoon patterns have changed and they've gone beyond repair. It has changed completely. So I think I'm getting closely associated with deeper infrastructure projects, which is building more eco-friendly houses, because we anticipate a lot more people will be reverse migrating to start living where we are working right now, storing more water. And I think on the 300-acre campus, we've made 150, 200 acres almost completely green. There's another 100 acres which remains, which is arid, semi-arid. The idea is to convert that into a haven now. So that's my next challenge. Um, yeah, it just keeps me going.
Yeah, fantastic. I think we've covered a lot of it. Next is only a visit.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
we'll
Absolutely.
come down with Sunny Bhai and Aku and see it
Totally.
firsthand.
Absolutely. Open invitation. Please come whenever you guys have time.
Yeah, so amazing, Kunal, and it's very heartening. Like I said, Bangalore. You see a city right in front of your eyes changing, and you can't do much about it except in your own little way, in your locality, your community, and your home. But you're a warrior who's like left greener pastures and now come to the
Yeah.
green, the real green pastures.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for all the work that you're doing, and it's really inspiring.
Yeah.
And we hope that Indic Academy will also work with you sometime in the future.
I hope so too.
Yeah. Thank you. Namaste.